Hi everyone, this is the video that goes with chapter 4. So this is a new unit in the book. We're talking about traits, and as I said earlier in the semester, the trait approach and the biological approach are the two that we use the most frequently in current research in psychology and seem to be the best way to explain personality and the development of personality and changes in personality, all of those things. When you're thinking about traits, make sure that you understand the difference between a trait and a state. So the state is whatever state you're in right now. Your mood is a particular state. The mood that you're in right now may not be the mood you're in later today or tomorrow or that you were in yesterday. So those would be states. Your traits are consistent across situations. That's what makes them a trait. So just by definition, they should be able to predict your behavior in some way. If we know something about your traits, we might not know everything about how you would act in a particular situation, but we know something, and that's helpful. The focus when we're talking about traits is on individual differences. So we're looking at how people differ. Keep that in mind when you're taking the assessments in this course, and particularly in the chapters relating to traits, because sometimes people will say, well, what does my score mean? And your score in and of itself might not mean anything. What it means is when you look at everybody else's scores, are you relatively high or relatively low on whatever it is that's being measured? So it's really your individual difference among other people rather than this is a score that's acceptable for the following reasons. So just keep that in mind when you're taking the assessments. The quote, every person is like all other people, like some other people, like no other person, is relevant to this chapter. There are ways that you're just like everybody else, right? You feel pain just like everybody else. You need comfort and safety just like everybody else. You are also like some other people. You have some similarities in some of your personality traits with your friends, with your family members, with people that you work with or interact with on a frequent basis. You're not identical to them though. So in some way you're like nobody else. You know, the one thing that's completely unique about you is your personality. You've got some similarities with other people, but no two people have the exact same personality. And if you have siblings, partners, parents, you definitely know that everybody differs in that way. So the book starts, or the chapter starts off by going into a great deal of depth on the person-situation debate. I think it's interesting. I think it's worth reading. I think it's perhaps overdone in this chapter, unless you're going into the study of personality, in which case you need to know that it exists and you'll go back and study it in more depth. The situationists thought that that we really should not be thinking about traits. We should just be thinking about the power of the situation. They thought that traits were relatively low in explanatory or predictive ability, that the situation therefore had to be more important than a trait, and that that we tend to err in thinking that people are more consistent across situations because of their traits than they actually are. So my response to that whole section of the chapter is, if you are convinced by the situationist argument, then honestly, I'm not sure what you're doing in this class, because we are studying personality as though there are parts of it that endure across situations because of traits, because of biology, and because of other factors. So if it's all about the situation, then why do we need personality psychology? I think that we do. I think that by the end of the semester, or I hope by the end of the semester, you'll see a lot of ways that we can measure traits, that we can think about it, and we can use that not to predict with 100% accuracy what anybody's going to do in a particular situation, but it does give us some information. And ignoring that information, is a loss. It's a loss in terms of data. If you think that everything is about the situation, then that would suggest that nobody is to blame for anything, right? That they didn't bring anything to the table. It was all about the situation, and that can't be true. That's the strong situation, or actually the strong, that's the strongest argument there. So I'll let you come to your own decisions about that. I think that we have personal responsibility. I think that situations matter, but traits matter as well. The study of social psychology. So if you've had a course in social psychology, you know this. If you remember the unit on social psychology from introductory psychology, social psychology is all about the study of how individuals act in a social situation in the presence of a real or imagined group. Sociology is the study of groups, psychology the study of individuals, but social psychology in particular is the study of how individuals how their behavior changes in the presence of a real or imagined group. So that's sort of the other side. That's the one that takes up the side of the situation or the importance of the situation. So I'm not here to say that the situation doesn't matter. It totally matters. But when you're thinking about it in terms of personality psychology, traits matter quite a lot as well. It's also the case that there's some rank order stability in traits. And so if you're the quietest person in your class, you might also be one of the quietest people in a party. Not necessarily, but there tends to be this rank order stability. And as you get older, you might be a little bit less quiet, but you'll be a little bit less quiet across all of those situations. And so knowing where you are on these traits now can help us to predict where you'll be later. And so we'll talk about that when we talk about the development of personality later this semester. Accuracy. If we're judging personality, and we're doing it all the time, we judge the personality of the person in front of us in the line at the grocery store and how quickly they go through self-checkout. We make judgments about people's driving and what kind of a person they are to have driven the way that they did. We're making judgments all the time, also with people that we know very well, but I'm just giving you a couple of examples of people that we don't know, and we still judge their personality. We think about what kind of a person they are. The more we have convergent validity, or the more information that we have from different sources, the better our accuracy is going to be. And so when we talked earlier in the semester about the different kinds of data, S, B, I, and L, having lots of data from different sources can converge on the correct answer. Also, different people who are observing the same person should come up with the same answer, right? There should be some level of accuracy there. First impressions matter. When you think about a first impression of somebody, one of the reasons you say, well, I don't know this person at all, how could I judge? But we do judge. And what's going on is our brains are much more complex than sometimes we are consciously aware of. And in the background, when you meet somebody, your brain is doing all kinds of what we call system one processing, doing all kinds of processing to see whether the person is similar to people who have hurt you in the past, people who have helped you in the past, those kinds of things. Not everybody hurts you and helps you, but I'm just using a simple dichotomy. And so if you say, oh, my first impression is that I like that person, it's probably the case that somewhere in your brain, that person seemed to demonstrate a number of behaviors that were similar to behaviors of people who you've known in your life and liked. And so first impressions don't come from nowhere, I guess is the point that I want to make there. There are two models then for the rest of this chapter that I want you to focus on, or that I hope that you'll focus on, and they're different, and they're both going to be on tests. One of them, and they both have four components, so they're confusing because they're in the same chapter and they have the same number of components. One is the moderators of accuracy, and the other is the realistic accuracy model. So as you're studying this, make sure that you are aware of both of those as separate things. So the moderators of accuracy are the judge, the target, the trait, the information on which they're being judged. So, who are the best judges of personality? Because if you want to be accurate, the person who's doing the judging should be a good judge. And the people who tend to be good judges they engage in complex thinking. They are pretty empathic. They tend to judge other people favorably unless they have information to the contrary. They value and emphasize interpersonal relationships. So there are characteristics that make somebody a good judge. I've known people before who have said that they're an excellent judge of personality. And just by virtue of the fact that they said that to me out loud, made me think, I wonder if you really are. Because if you think you are, I'm not sure that's one of the attributes that, overconfidence isn't necessarily the thing that we're looking for there. Good target, some people are easier to judge than others. Some people are more consistent in their behaviors than others. So if you're trying to judge my personality or the personality of somebody who is relatively consistent across situations, then that person is a good target. I don't know about you, but I know I can think of a couple of people in my life who every time you open the door to them or meet them someplace, you're not really sure which person you're getting, right? And so it could be the happy version of them, it could be the angry version of them, and those people are harder to judge. It's harder to judge their personality for a variety of reasons. So people with consistent behavior can be easier to judge. Some traits are easier to judge than others. Judging extroversion, relatively easy. Judging, sort of the tendency to overthink things, not so easy. So Depends on what trait you're looking at, how accurate you might be. And then good information, right? There's the quantity of information, if you have a lot of information, but also the quality of the information. Are you looking at people and judging them based on their performance or their actions in a relatively strong situation, like a college classroom or a funeral or a religious service? There are a lot of constraints on behavior there. And so that's a really strong situation, and it restricts what people do. In a weak situation, maybe a party, maybe taking a walk in the park, the different kinds of things that people do, or playing a game. There are a lot of behaviors that could be exhibited, and so that's a relatively weak situation. So weak situations might give you more information about a person than a strong situation. An open-ended interview where you just ask the person to talk about themselves will give you more information about them than if you ask them specific questions about themselves and look for specific answers. Okay, so those are the moderators. Now, this is the realistic accuracy model, RAM. Also has 4 components. So the components are, if you're judging somebody's personality and you're looking at them, the person being judged has to do something that's relevant in order for you to judge it. You can't judge them based on just a picture. The information has to be available to the judge, and they have to have noticed it. So they have to have detected it, and they have to use that information. Improving the accuracy is hard. Accuracy in general is hard. It's hard to judge somebody else's personality. There wouldn't be, all the research studies and all of the different tests and all of the different ways to do it, if it was easy to do. So it is very, very difficult. So keep those in mind. Look at that section of the book. The book talks about how to know yourself better, and so being better at judging your own personality, observing your own behavior, listening to feedback from other people, whether it's constructive criticism or complimentary. That can help you know yourself better. Some of the assessments that you'll take in this class hopefully will help you think about different aspects of your personality, and I hope know yourself better. I feel like when I've been studying personality, I've noticed things in myself and in others that have made me more empathic, right? It's made me a nicer person because I understand more about why somebody might be doing the things that they're doing, and don't just sort of skip to a judgment and then leave it there. So accuracy matters. You're going to be judged all the time, and you're going to judge others all the time. And so knowing more about personality psychology can really help. If you're accurate, that's going to affect the opportunities that you have, opportunities that other people have. If you think of somebody else as having a particular personality trait, there are expectancy effects, and so they're more likely to exhibit that trait around you. And so just being careful of those things, and then careful of how we judge and how we can be right. So I hope you enjoyed chapter 4, and if you've got any questions, let me know. Thanks. Bye.